Hi guys, what is up? My name is Dylan. Welcome back to the Popcorn Podcast. I hope everyone's having a splendid day. Bit of a different episode for you guys, but not so much different that we have a new guest.
Oh,
At this point, I mean, Panwa, you've basically become a co-host of the podcast.
Oh, Jesus.
But Panwa, unfortunately, he's saying goodbye. He's waving goodbye for the second time now, I'd say.
Yeah.
The first time we did the Flash episode.
As the vision says to Wanda, we've said goodbye so many times.
So many times.
It stands to reason we'll say hello again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna say, I will say to you guys, Panwa's not gonna be around for a while, but you never know.
His presence.
His presence will be here. This episode is a little bit of a different one. We are going to essentially cover some films that we haven't actually discussed on the podcast and given their fully fledged episodes on. And we're kind of going to go through 10 different films, 5 big budget blockbusters and 5 sort of more art house indie films, and sort of give our kind of quick thoughts in a quick fire of all, not all, but some of the films that we would like to give some thoughts on.
Yeah,
I'd say.
sure.
Yeah. So let's just go straight into it. The first film we're going to talk about is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I feel like I should maybe kick this one off because I am such a big fan of Indiana Jones. Spielberg is basically my hero, my favorite director. He's made a lot of my all-time favorite films, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom.
What's your favorite Indiana Jones movie?
So I think...
Why is it Temple of Doom?
So objectively speaking, if I were to say what is the best, and if you could only watch one Indiana Jones film, I'd say watch Raiders. I think you could make an argument for any of the three.
Yep.
Last Crusade is probably as well. Temple of Doom is my favorite.
It's the most fun, man. It's the funniest.
It's fun. It's the most crazy. It's the most unhinged. It has Ki Hui Kwan as Short Round in there. Also, like, I mean, my parents are from Sri Lanka, and they shot that film in Sri Lanka.
Nice.
Even though in the film it's India, but they shot it in Sri Lanka, so they were always my mum especially was a big fan of the film and was sort of really kind of got me into that film and whatnot, and I just love Temple of Doom. Dial of Destiny, though, this year, it was the first Indiana Jones films directed not by Spielberg but by James Mangold, which is a director that I think the both of us we admire. I think he's a very good director. You know, he's done Ford v Ferrari, Logan, The Wolverine,
3:10 to Yuma,
Walk the Line as well, with Joaquin Phoenix. So generally speaking, my thoughts on Dial of Destiny was that I felt like it was, I hate using this phrase, but very mid for me. I don't, this might be a hot take, but I actually prefer Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I won't even lie. I feel like my biggest issue with this is, even though I respect James Mangold and I think he's a great director, I feel like Indiana Jones just isn't the same without Spielberg. I feel like Spielberg, amongst other components like John Williams and so on and so forth, are embedded within the very DNA of Indiana Jones. And if I feel like you taken Spielberg out, you lose a lot of the playfulness, the sense of fun. And I think James Mangold is quite a safe director with regards to taking a massive IP and kind of just...
That's kind of why I'm excited for a Star Wars movie.
Right.
He can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to stay true to a certain, vibe or tone so much, because his one is about the origins of the Jedi. And so I'm really excited for that. One of the things I did like about Dial of Destiny, as I said in the review I wrote in Letterboxd, was it was one of the few films I've seen this year that looks and feels as expensive as it costs. Yeah. Because as we've been talking about, there's loads and loads of movies that are basically just kind of, they're not even films, they're just VFX, sort of showcases. And I think with Dial of Destiny, I was like, it actually felt like you were shooting on real locations. The props, the extras, everything, it just feels a bit bigger, and it felt like they actually knew where the money was going to be put into. The big issue I had with the movie for me was pacing, because I said this to my friend, was
a very long film.
Not only was the movie too long, the issue that I diagnosed very early on was the movie has very, very few scenes, but each of those scenes are about 5 to 10 minutes too long.
Yes.
Which basically means that psychologically you're thinking, when can we get to the next one?
Yeah.
When can we get to the next one?
Exactly.
Wait, why was that so long? Why did we have to spend so much time in this one location?
Especially when you have a character like Indiana Jones, whose whole thing is,
he's
always moving. He's always he's an archaeologist.
So it has very few. So it has the opposite problem to Napoleon, where Napoleon has a bunch of really short scenes, but there are loads of them.
Yeah.
This one has 20 scenes in the entire movie or something, but they're all weirdly long. They're all 20 minutes, half an hour. I'm like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That was kind of the issue I diagnosed.
I feel like for me, when I went into the film and the film started, the first sort of 20 minutes, that sequence with the Nazis that takes place back in time, I thought firstly that was the best part about that was the most sort of close to
Spielberg.
to Spielberg from the Indiana Jones I know and love.
I like the bit where he rides a horse in the underground and he rides
in New York,
confetti coming down.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. But that was following a scene, like you said, that was way too long. It was in like a library or some archive records. I was like, what is going on here? And I thought the first 20 minutes, none of the rest of the film never really matched the momentum or the sense of adventure that first 20 minutes had. That was almost like it's a little short film, so to speak.
100%.
Of course, you have I want to say the issue of like the sort of de-aging and stuff. The de-aging compared to a lot of other films was actually really good. But when you use de-aging, I think the audience always knows to a certain extent, what's been fully photographed and what's not. But just overall, I was a little disappointed with it. I don't really know how they kind of just. I didn't feel the need for this film, and by the end of it, it didn't really have a conclusion.
No.
He sort of gets back with Marion.
Yep.
And Phoebe Waller-Bridge is the big character, the big new character, I guess.
Yeah.
And I didn't really care that much for her character. And I felt like a lot of the writing around her character was very lazy. Like towards the end, she sort of just jumps on a motorcycle and just goes down. I'm like, where did this? How incredibly confusing. And the third act as well. The Indiana Jones films have always been on the line of like between fantasy and kind of reality, kind of played around with those elements, but this kind of fully kind of just went into sort of, dare I say, parody terms. I mean, they went completely back in time.
We've had like the Ark of the Covenant, we've had voodoo wizards, aliens. So I guess time travel is not that far-fetched, but it still felt like
yes, if they played around with time travel, which was in a more interesting way, I would have been on board, but they literally just went back into the past. I was like, this is I can't anymore. Quite disappointed with Dial of Destiny, if I'm being completely honest. So the next blockbuster we're going to talk about, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This was a nice surprise.
Yes, it was.
I thought it was really charming.
Yes.
Very well directed, I think. Go on.
I mean, I love these directors, and as soon as I knew that they were the ones doing the Dungeons and Dragons movie, I was like, okay, so we now know that this is going to be that was actually really good.
Yeah.
Because they made Game Night, which was kind of the underrated movie of that year. And I also liked Vacation that they made as well. When they made this, it was so funny. I love that film. So when they making this, I was like, I know for sure that when I go into this, I'm going to come out and be like, yeah, that was actually pretty good. And it was actually pretty good. There were some really great kind of interesting moments. Like there was a great long take, kind of CGI long take scene where what's her name, Sophia Lillis?
Yeah, that was so cool. That was very cool.
Chris Pine is obviously Mr. Charisma.
Yeah.
I also think for the first time,
he's so much Mr. Charisma that his character is essentially not anyone particularly
useless.
Yeah, useless, but he still steals the scenes, and his command,
What I did love about this film as well were the casting choices, because I think more so than any other film, this one was the one that knew exactly who they were casting and used those actors to the best of their abilities. For example, I've always thought Justice Smith has been an actor that I've never really understood or liked. Like I don't really understand why he's always in so many movies.
He's like the male version of a damsel in distress.
Yes.
Like in Jurassic Park, what was it, Dominion? All you heard was this guy scream for the entire.
He's just always I don't know. He always feels like a bit of a loser, and he always plays the same character.
Yeah.
But with this one, they knew how to use him properly, so they kind of leaned into that.
Yeah.
Reggae John Page, for example, is kind of this guy who's famous for being attractive, basically, and being very stoic and being very manly.
And they played around with that.
They cast him as the most boring black do-gooder knight of all time. So they kind of as Ice Cube says in 21 Jump Street, embrace the stereotypes, which I really liked. And I guess the directors did a fantastic job, and I enjoyed it. And I think, it's a good movie.
Yeah, and I think particularly the timing of when this film came out, it was after films like Quantum Mania and Super Mario Bros. These big, large-scale studio blockbusters, and this one was just good.
Yeah,
the directors were
also, it has the best cameo of the year.
Oh, with Bradley Cooper.
With Bradley
That was hilarious. That was good. Because I remember I went to the cinema with my nephews to see this film, and they had like no idea what the film was really about or anything, and they usually get very bored with films, and to have a film that they weren't really connected to the IP for and they still enjoy was is a good sign. So up next we have Creed 3.
I think it might be the first. This and Air, we've not really talked about. I liked Air, but those were the first two films that really came out, and I actually really liked this year. Michael B. Jordan does a fantastic job directing it. I thought he did a really, really cool job of making him different from Coogler and Stephen Cable Jr. Jonathan Majors was incredible.
Yeah.
He has a great physicality. I've always thought that not only is he a great actor of kind of dialogue and stuff, but the reason I think he was so good in Ant-Man as well was because he had a presence.
Yeah.
And he has that presence in this film. The cinematography, the way the fights are shot, is really, really interesting.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan said he was inspired a lot by anime.
Right?
Yeah, and sort of going in with those slow-mo.
Weirdly enough, though, thinking about Creed 3, what my favorite aspect of the movie was, how awesome his outfits are in every single movie. This is fun.
He does have some pretty badass outfits.
They did a partnership with Ralph Lauren. And
yes.
all of his clothes are like custom designed by Ralph Lauren for Creed. And I was like, okay, I want that. I want that.
We love Ralph Lauren.
Yeah, exactly. So I really like that aspect of the movie, and I thought it was a solid entry into the franchise. I've heard he's going to do 4.
Interesting.
So I'm down.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of where my thoughts on it in the trilogy so far, I think it is the weakest, just because I'm thinking about Creed 3 and I'm like, I liked it. It was fine.
But it was the weakest of 3 incredible movies.
Yeah. I mean, the first one is great. Yeah. It's fantastic. The second one is really good as well.
The best training montage.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And Creed 3, I mean,
he outsprints a car.
Yes, he does.
In the desert.
Yeah. No, crazy stuff. And this one is kind of just the one that is story-wise and the amount of emotion involved here, I don't know if I sort of connected with it as much as the first two.
You think it's because we don't have Sylvester Stallone?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because he is a big part of the Rocky franchise. Exactly, yeah. So maybe it's that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed the film. Wasn't my favorite film of the year by any means, but it was good. It was solid. Yeah. Next up, we have The Creator. I think a lot of great stuff to take away from this one for me, particularly. I think Gareth Edwards, I mean, he once again proves why he's like one of the most, I feel like, exciting directors of sci-fi. The film looks stunning, sounds stunning, half shot by Greg Fraser, score by Hans Zimmer. Score was it was fine. It was a serviceable Hans Zimmer score. It was fine. I
remember a single moment of the music, but yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. I thought the Nomad ship, the design of that was really cool, especially in IMAX. And it's a film you really felt the scale of, I want to say, and sort of like the emotional core between John David Washington and this kid. I remember it was really pushing some tears out of me.
Wow.
Not like I wasn't fully bawling, but it was like really pushing me towards the end. Yeah, I feel like my main sort of gripes with the film is to do more with, I felt like the story lacked a bit of lacked development.
There was no story.
There was exactly. The AI stuff was really interesting, but for me ultimately surface level, and it wasn't really saying anything new or different
I couldn't agree more.
From other
I think with regards to the themes and the story and everything, I think I'll be honest, I can relate to Gareth Edwards in this sense in some ways. I think he just wanted to make a movie. I don't think he wanted to say anything particularly profound. I think anything to do with story or characters, as he talked about with Rogue One, was just kind of like his excuse to get to the next set piece. And he apparently, he kind of admitted that for Rogue One, and that's something that is kind of like a red flag with filmmakers, but he admitted that very kind of nonchalantly. So I gotta respect the guy for that. But anything that this movie is saying thematically or emotionally is something that has been said far better by other films. Ex Machina, Her, whatever, right? But with regards to the filmmaking, which is why you bring me here for,
exactly.
I have a love-hate relationship with this movie, because I think on one hand, I've heard stories, because the predominantly was shot in Thailand, so I've heard a lot of stories with people who worked on it and stuff like that. They had a lot of respect for him as a director because he was able to do things really fast, really efficient. He obviously famously shot the movie on a bunch of Sony FX3s and was the camera operator himself and just had a guy running around with lights, and so they were able to just keep going and reset very quickly. They didn't shoot it in the traditional way of just half an hour for each shot set up. It was 3 minutes, 30 seconds for each shot. And I think a lot of the people who have spoken to me about working on that film was it was so fast, it was so quick, it was a different energy, it was a different pace. It felt adventurous. It felt like they were kind of back, not even in film school, but they were back with their friends making kids when they films when they were kids. And I really respect them, Gareth Edwards, for that. And it's very validating because that's actually how I shoot films. And I don't buy into that whole takes an hour and a half to set up one close-up nonsense. So I really, really admire him for that, and I think I really rate him and relate to him as a director for that. But the reason I sometimes, I'm critical of him as a director is when you watch something like Godzilla or Rogue One, and now the creator, what I've realized is, okay, let's say you have a director like Zack Snyder, right, is another big blockbuster director, wherein, he has like every shot looks like a painting or like an illustration, right? And so he creates those movements, he creates those compositions that feel really iconic. What I've realized about Gareth Edwards is that he's the opposite of that, wherein his shots, his visuals feel like concept art because it looks cool in theory, but there's no real aside from the shot of Darth Vader standing there in the hallway,
there's no real weight.
One iconic shot from Rogue One. You can't. I can name a lot of interesting shots that would look cool in a comic book or in a concept art book, or even Godzilla. Can you name me one iconic shot of Godzilla in that entire movie? No, you can't.
I remember the Halo jump.
Yes, yeah.
That was,
but name me.
But that was maybe more so because it was used so much in the marketing.
Exactly. Yeah. But name me one frame.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. You can't. Same with the creator. It's a good-looking movie, but it doesn't have the visual. It's not like Zack Snyder where you pause. Screenshot, pause, screenshot. This one is everything looks good in that VFX is good, props is good, costumes are cool, everything. But he's just filming them. It's what's being seen that looks good, not how it's being shot, and therefore I can't help but feel that it has that concept arty feel.
I don't know. I feel like I can see where you're coming from, but I feel like Gareth Edwards' films, like Godzilla, like Rogue One, and the creator. I feel like the intent and the reason why that is the case, why it's not like Zack Snyder, is because Zack Snyder's stories are always typically about these larger-than-life, godlike figures. You're seeing it from their perspective.
Godzilla?
Well, Godzilla, but remember where we're seeing the perspective of Godzilla from. The entire time it's from the humans. Right, we're not following around Godzilla.
That's why I prefer the way Godzilla was filmed in the second.
In the second one, right? Even with the creator, I feel like if you take a Zack Snyder approach, it doesn't have the same effect with connecting with the characters, right?
You don't,
You're seeing. That's why I like Gareth Edwards, because he shoots like ships through a window from like a person on a train.
Yeah.
And you have that level of world building. Exactly. Like it really gives the world that scope to it, which is why I think it actually works really well. But this might just be the personal.
It's just for me, is because obviously I love shots that feel like paintings. I love shots that you can screenshot and hang up on, you know. So a lot of the times when I was watching the movie, I was like, you were there? You went all the way there? And that's what you film? I'm like, because it's like, that's such a cool location. And all you do is get like a shaky handheld close-up of someone's like feet. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, look, just look at everything. And I'm like, you know what I mean? So that was my gripe, but I still really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, I think it was a decent film overall. I mean, like I said, it didn't really have anything new or interesting to say, but overall, in terms of just
it still got the job done to a nice degree, and I think has inspired a lot of filmmakers in regards to the way that it was made.
No, definitely, exactly. The last big budget blockbuster film that we're going to talk about that we were going to shoot an episode on but didn't was Mission Impossible 7 Dead Reckoning Part 1. I enjoyed the film. We saw it together.
Yeah, we did.
We did. Enjoyed the film a lot. For me, though, I much more prefer Fallout, Ghost Protocol, and Rogue Nation. My favorite is still Ghost Protocol, even though I think Fallout is objectively, I would say, the best, in my opinion. I felt like this one, it really suffers from the Part 1 syndrome, I feel.
I didn't think so.
I feel like, really?
Yeah.
I feel like especially the ending as well. I felt like the entire film was... there were a lot of scenes that were very, very exposition heavy, and sort of setting up a very mechanical plot with AI and stuff. And we have it on good authority that this script didn't necessarily have the most natural of origins. But the Mission Impossible films are never for the plot. Really, no. They're for the action and for the stunts. But that is actually my biggest problem with the film. Unfortunately, is I think the action sequences are great, and they always are. They shoot this stuff for real. These stunt, we know what we're talking about,
and underhyped, overhyped in marketing, underhyped in the film.
This is the problem. So I felt like I watched that scene about 10 times before I watched it in the movie because they shot a whole sort of mini documentary about this and played it at the start of every single every IMAX film. So when I watched it in the film, the stunt, of course, I'm referring to is when Tom Cruise essentially,
off the cliff.
Exactly, drives a motorcycle.
Which by no means this is the most impressive thing he's done. He's hung off a plane, man. Like
exactly. I mean, that's open for debate, but I think like in terms of technically speaking, it required, from what I heard, the most sort of training and orchestrating and whatnot, and I felt like the documentary itself was more interesting to me than the actual scene.
Yeah,
it just sort of happened. I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I guess that's that. So I didn't really feel the weight of that stunt, unfortunately. I really hope they do a better job with the marketing of the next one. I don't want them to give away too much of it. I still really enjoyed the film.
No, so did I. I love it.
I thought Hayley Atwell was cool, a nice addition. I mean, I still have a soft spot for Rebecca Ferguson, who, spoiler alert, does die in the film. And I thought the scene with her just before she dies, that fight scene as she's fighting Thingy on the bridge, and Ethan is like racing and he's fighting Pom Clemente off in like the most sort of claustrophobic of environments was awesome, such man. It was brilliant.
Opening scene, I think it has one of the best opening scenes in a Mission Impossible film, the submarine.
That was brilliant.
Really,
that was great.
I would say that with regards to this film, the reason I didn't feel the Part 1 syndrome, I think this is the Age of Ultron of the Mission Impossible franchise, because I love Age of Ultron. I think it's so slept on. I think people completely forget how good that movie actually is, because ultimately Age of Ultron is that middle child that isn't quite as bang, look how good I am as the first Avengers, and it isn't quite as emotionally hard-hitting and conclusive as Infinity War ended. Right. So this is kind of that weird middle child. Like ever since Christopher McQuarrie started, I wouldn't even say that Rogue Nation was his start. I think Fallout was his start. He was still finding his footing in Rogue Nation. And so he started with Fallout, and then he's got this and he's got the next one, right? And I think this is kind of that awkward middle child where I think with regards to trilogies, sometimes the middle one is either the best one or the weakest one. No, let me rephrase. It's either the best one or the most awkward one. And I think this is kind of that one where it's kind of awkward. Like you need to set up certain things. Yeah. You need to, pick up where you left off in certain areas. And, you're just kind of doing stuff because this kind of looks cool and feels cool. And but there's never, because you know that it's not going to be the last one. And you know it's not going to be the first one. You can kind of just do whatever you want, and sometimes you could get carried away and lost within that. And I would say that was one of the issues that I had, where I was like, okay, cool, But I think if you watch it as its own, as its own movie, I think it's good. I also would say that this movie would have been better if it came out before Top Gun. I think people were riding high off of Top Gun, being like, that movie was so good. And when they told us, it was good. It's really, really good. But I think it would have been way better if it came out before Top Gun.
That is an interesting point that you make. Yeah, I mean, look, it's still 100 times better than a lot of the action films that we see.
And it's so much fun. I think you have to be a proper snob to not enjoy these movies.
Yeah.
If you don't go in for the action, you don't have fun. You're an idiot.
Exactly.
You're not watching the right movie.
No, exactly. And I think expectations as well is something you have to kind of nail before going into this film. You're not going for the plot. You're going to see Tom Cruise almost die, basically.
Run around and jump.
Exactly. And he's been doing this for I don't know how many years now, and it's still brilliant. It's still.
Again, I got to use my Napoleon argument of it was a difficult movie to make. I respect it so much because it's they were in deserts, they were in fjords.
We had stories from production on set.
And the train, and it's this is not an easy movie to make, and it requires a lot of people to make. And as a filmmaker, you cannot help but respect them. So I think if you're a filmmaker and you're shitting on this movie, fuck you, man. You're an idiot. Go and try and do that. I double dare you, because you couldn't.
Well, I think that's well said. Yep. I think on that note, we'll move on to the smaller ones, the art house, the indies. I feel like this is kind of what people wanting to do.
Anyway,
yeah, right? I mean, big budget blockbusters. Yeah, sure, whatever. All right, first one we're going to talk about. Should we talk about past lives? Let's do past lives.
Let's do past lives.
Yeah, I sort of had my experience with this.
Yeah, what did you?
My experience with this film was, I'm not saying not the best, but I didn't watch it in an ideal situation. I watched it at 3 a.m.
Yep.
So I always tell people not to watch films like this, but this is ultimately what happened with Past Lives to me. I feel like I need to give the film another shot, which I will, because prior to watching it, I had heard incredible things about it, and I think it is a really, really good film. You know, it's a simple film. It's a poignant film, and it's a deeply moving film about ultimately human connection, and it's like a meditation on love, and it's an incredibly powerful film. But yeah, like I said, not a film you should be watching at 3 a.m. I know the film for you, I feel like it's different. Do you want to tell the people?
So for those of you who have seen Past Lives or not, you'll know that the movie is about an Asian child who moves to a Western country with, and grows up predominantly in a Western country and finds themselves, discovering themselves, and ends up in a creative field. So you could imagine, I related to it quite a lot. What related to it even more, though, was...
Oh, no!
But, the romantic aspect of it and rediscovering someone from your childhood and God, I'm getting way too... I'm not going to talk about that, but yeah, basically...
Let us have it.
I related to the movie a lot, is my point. And there were moments in the movie that no one would laugh at, but I would laugh at because I have done that, or someone has done that with me. Yeah. There was a scene where the female lead, she realizes that she's about to have a Skype call with the guy, and then she's just walking with a bit of a spring in her step, and then she starts jumping, and then she's just like, oh fuck it, I'm just gonna run home. And I was like, I really love those little tiny human moments. It was the movie that, again, like I said, I related to the most, the movie that got me the most emotional, the movie that made me want to reach out to the most friends and other people, but I didn't, and be like, hey, I think you should watch this movie. And so much so to the point that obviously I went to see it with one of our friends, and she loved it, and and that got her so emotional that she was going to start doing some pretty crazy stuff with that would have changed the course of my life, but wow. I stopped her. But yeah, it was a movie that I think affects a lot of people on an emotional level. But actually, the funny thing is, I feel about this film the opposite to what I feel about John Wick, in that I love the filmmaking, I love that, but obviously John Wick has no story. This one was it's all story, it's all emotion, it's all content. But I just didn't rate the directing. People were talking about this movie as being Celine's Song, the director's first feature, and they were like, I couldn't tell this was a debut feature. Yes, you can. Of course you can. It has debut feature written all over it. I think it's made by someone who, when in doubt, go back to what makes me comfortable, which is just long shots of people talking. And people say that's patient, it's very methodical, it's very measured. That was the word that people were using. I'm like, no, you didn't want to cut because it would have been bad for sound, because you're filming in a public location and you only have X amount of hours to get it. I can see straight through. This is the most rudimentary way to shoot a debut feature. Is when you don't have that kind of confidence to back yourself, you do everything in a long take because it's good for sound, it's good for camera, it's easy for everyone, it's good for actors. And the film language of the movie was when in doubt, pan. When in doubt, tilt. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was literally saying you're gonna pan for the 6th consecutive shot from left to right? Have some fucking creativity. Have some switch it up. I've seen this. You've established the visual language and you've done it and repeated yourself a million times. What did you think about the filmmaking?
The opening shot I thought that was a really good hook.
Yes.
Sort of the opening shot is the shot of the 3 of them, right, at the bar. And then there's a commentary saying, do you think so-and-so is the boyfriend, or do you think da-da-da is the boyfriend? What's really going on here? Yep. So that was and it was a slow zoom in, right? Yep. And when I saw that, dare I say, it reminded me a little bit of Whiplash's opening shot of slowly just sort of going to say The Godfather, coming in.
That's what I got.
Oh, high praise though. These are 2 very good films.
Coming from the person who just said the film.
Yeah. I didn't really have an issue with the filmmaking that much, because I felt like it was able to establish a connection between the camera and the emotion of the film, and really drive the emotion through the visual language. I don't feel like...
I should say Greta Lee in the lead role, I think, is my favorite performance of the year.
Yeah, you did say that. Yeah, she is fantastic. I feel like, we obviously did disagree on this, but at no point was I taken out of the film because I thought that this is boringly shot. I felt like I was always there with the characters.
I didn't think it was boringly shot, but as a filmmaker, I can see that. I'm you didn't do that. I'm willing to bet that they didn't do that because it was the easy choice to make.
Right.
I will say though, there's one setup in the movie which I think is genius, and maybe it wasn't intentional, and maybe I unintentionally put purpose to this shot. But when they're at the bar, that bar scene was shot from many different angles. And there was one angle where it was on the guy, and he was on the right-hand side of the frame, and the left-hand side was empty, right? And they were talking basically about like, oh, what could have been, and I remember thinking, that is so smart, because you know what happens is that it makes the audience dread the inevitable reverse shot, because when it cuts back to Greta Lee in that empty space, it's not empty. Her husband sat there, and I remember, but I don't think they ever cut back to that angle, which is genius. Now I'm like, it just shows the dynamic in visuals, because he sat in one corner, he's empty. That's you could be there, Greta. But then when it cuts, or when you hope that it cuts, or you think that it's going to cut, it's going to be two people in that shot, in the foreground and the background. I thought, so smart.
Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying is like it plays with the audience's expectations of
almost of shot structure.
Which is exactly.
Smart.
Yeah. But like I said, a film I need to rewatch. I need to give it a sort of a more sort of more focus, let's say. Next up we have Maestro, which isn't out of when we're filming this yet, but we did watch it at the London Film Festival. We went to the premiere for that, which was really cool. Unfortunately, didn't see Bradley Cooper because, of course, during the time there was the strikes, but we did hear the producers talk about the film, the costume design, the children of Leonard Bernstein. Yeah, we differ on this film. Do you want to tell the folks what you thought about the film?
Of every film that was made this year, this was the one where every single directorial decision that was made, from the shot composition to the direction where the camera pans or dollies to the patterns on the clothes, I agree with every single decision that was made. In my opinion, that if I was a member of the Academy, I would vote for this film as Best Director, because I understand Bradley Cooper's vision. I can see his intention with every single decision that he made. Like, is he going to cross his legs left and right, or is he going to cross his legs right and left?
Right.
I see everything. I agree with everything.
Yep.
And it just, it really shows that Bradley Cooper is truly a student of cinema. I think this guy needs to direct way more movies. He is so good. He's better than most directors, not like actor-directors. He's just better than most directors. Produced by Martin
Scorsese and Spielberg.
I think Bradley Cooper is, in my opinion, cemented himself as one of the great artists, one of the great creators of our time. Carey Mulligan probably will end up winning Best Actress. I think she's just a powerhouse of a performance. But I will say this, though, about the movie, which stops me from giving it like 10 out of 10 or 5 stars or whatever. It doesn't have the same kind of heart as A Star Is Born. I think A Star Is Born is heart first, craft second. I think Maestro is craft first, heart second.
Right.
And, like when you watch A Star Is Born, there are scenes where you get goosebumps, where you're like, it's just overtly powerful. It's just it's there, and like Lady Gaga's performance is big. It's out, whereas Carey Mulligan's performance is in. And I think I still love the movie, and I obviously think it'll be very high up on my end of the year list. And this is the greatest piece of compliment I think I could give Bradley Cooper, which is that for the first time watching a filmmaker, modern filmmaker, he reminded me with his creativity, with his audacity, with his confidence, and with his measuredness as a director of Orson Welles, which is very high praise. And I was reminded of Orson Welles as a filmmaker for the first time watching a modern movie. So I think he needs to win Best Director, in my opinion.
I mean, look, I agree with you. I think Bradley Cooper is fantastic, and to think this is his second film is insane.
Yeah.
I think what he was able to do as a director and what he was able to do visually was a lot more experimentative than A Star Is Born, and really he was really able to sort of come in to his own. This is clearly a very well directed film. Bradley Cooper, take a bow. And the level of detail, like you said, whether a character is going to cross their legs one way or another, from the costumes and the makeup.
Hey, can I just give one little costume tidbit? This is kind of a slight spoiler, but you watch this when it comes out. There is a scene where Carey Mulligan and Bradley Cooper are talking, and the entire scene is playing out in like a wide shot in a room. And I believe the entire room, I think it has green floors. It has green wallpaper, and it has Carey Mulligan is wearing green. And as she's speaking, Carey Mulligan basically says to Bradley Cooper, like, you suck the life out of every room, or like, you are the one who takes the attention of every room, and like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What color is Bradley Cooper wearing? Red. The complete opposite of green on the color wheel. It's like little details like that where I'm like, yep, smart, you did that. Yeah, like, hey, I've kind of done that before. Like, well, I want to do that, or like, I would do that. Like, well done.
But this is kind of a little bit of my problem with the film, because if you're thinking about that, are you not taken out of the story?
No, but I think about that with every movie.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You have a very specific way of looking at films, which is awesome. The problem I had with Maestro, it's a shame, because I felt like this film had real potential to be one of my favorites of the year.
It's a very Dylan movie.
It's a very Dylan movie. Leonard Bernstein is a composer, a conductor whose music I studied in when I was doing music back in school. His music I'm very familiar with. West Side Story, On the Waterfront.
One could almost say his music was instrumental to your.
Yes, and I went into this and I was like, this is going to be basically my favorite film of the year. I know it. And look, expectations were unhealthy, whatever. But I went into it and I was impressed by the level of detail and the filmmaking, and I can't fault Bradley Cooper in that department. I think his performance as Leonard Bernstein is also fantastic.
But
ultimately, where the film didn't sort of come to fruition for me was the perspective of things we see it from. So I went into this film wanting to learn more about Leonard Bernstein as a person.
Yeah. You learn more about his marriage, his wife.
Yeah, and ultimately I feel like Bradley Cooper, he said in multiple interviews, he wanted to tell this story as a love story through the eyes of both him and his wife. I think Carey Mulligan's performance in this film is potentially the best part about the film. I thought she was absolutely terrific. I think this is her strongest role that I've ever seen her in. But when you have these two different perspectives, it kind of the film was very unsure for me in that aspect of I'm sympathizing for Carey Mulligan, but am I also supposed to be sympathizing for Leonard Bernstein? Who is this story about?
Yeah.
What is the story about? And I felt like the vision from that perspective was very muddled, and I felt, unfortunately, quite detached from what I was seeing. When I left the film, I had more questions than answers, unfortunately. Despite everyone giving fantastic performances, and despite this being a technically brilliant film, sort of the entire film came off as rather muddled, and I was very confused by the end of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt like with something like A Star Is Born, even though technically not a step down, it's still very well made and whatnot. Maestro is technically a step up. That film for me, you knew exactly.
There's emotional clarity.
Exactly, there was emotional clarity. This film was. I went into a film about, look, it's called Maestro.
Yeah.
It was more Mulligan for me.
Yeah. Here's a fun fact. Hey everybody, here's some fun facts. I think Carey Mulligan, more than any actor of her female actor of her generation, has starred alongside and acted alongside, I think, a roster of the best. Male actors.
Yeah.
She did now Maestro with Bradley Cooper, Shame with Michael Fassbender, DiCaprio in Great Gatsby, Jake Gyllenhaal in Wildlife,
Ryan Gosling Drive,
Oscar Isaac inside Llewyn Davis and Drive. Like she's worked with all the best actors.
Yeah.
And she elevates their performances and is insane in her own right in every film. She's been one of my favorite actresses for like years and years and years.
Yeah. I think this is the first film though where she actually outshines
everybody.
Everyone, yeah. But yeah, like I said, I think this film is technically terrific. It's brilliant. And I would love to watch it again. It's not a film that I'm like
dying to see again or gonna brush off.
No, as in like I would love to watch it again, but it's not and it's not a film that has like really, really disappointed me.
Yeah.
But I felt like
I think it'll grow on you. I
hope so. I hope so. Yeah, and I only made my mind up about the film like 3 days after, because I was really thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. But on to the next film.
Yes.
Let's talk about David Fincher's The Killer.
Yes.
Another one that we saw at the London Film Festival.
Did. I got to see David Fincher.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Contact. I got to see him.
So what I said in my review for the film was the film is cold, sharp, and meticulous.
Just like Fincher.
And those are words I'd use to describe David Fincher himself and his more so his approach to his craft. And I said those are also 3 words I'd use to describe the titular killer and his approach to his craft. So I feel like this film, in many ways, although I don't think the film is flawless, I feel like Fincher is back. In sublime style, and in many ways, like I said, he so happens to have crafted a film that sort of very much encapsulates his own methods and ideology to filmmaking, and I think I love that.
Okay.
I think it's terrific.
Fantastic.
But you want to say something?
Yeah, this is the closest I think I'll get to a Panwa rant this episode.
You did not like the ending.
Yes, we'll get to that in a second. Oh my god. David Fincher is basically the closest to being my favorite director of any director.
Yep.
I think I've said this before. We've had the kind of this argument of who is the greatest of this current generation of directors, kind of in their 50s and 60s. I think Fincher is the best. I think he's better than Tarantino or Nolan. I think the only person that comes close are Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson. I think David Fincher has the best filmmaking IQ of any director of his generation. I think he is just not necessarily as a movie maker or whatever, but as a director, as like doing his job. I think he's the best. I would say that his films have really been instrumental to my upbringing as a filmmaker. I studied his work very with great detail. When I was at school, I did my EPQ project on him when I was in sixth form. Walked away with an A star, thank you very much. And so he has been my GOAT, my hero for so long. And so to see him make a more kind of Finchery movie in line with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or Gone Girl, kind of like serial killer movies,
coming off the Mank as well.
Yeah, coming off of Mank, was a great kind of joy. I loved so much of this movie. It has one of the great fight scenes of the year. Tilda Swinton.
Oh my gosh!
When he talks to Tilda Swinton, that conversation scene, I think is probably the best. Just two people sat and talking. Scene in a film this year. However, I fucking hate the ending of this film. I hated it. After the Tilda Swinton scene, when he goes and doesn't kill the final target, imagine that, man. What kind of expectation subversion is this? It's worse than The Bloody Last Jedi. Imagine making a movie called There Will Be Blood and no one bleeds. Imagine making a movie called Kill Bill and Bill doesn't get killed. Imagine making a movie called Drive and he goes everywhere on foot. Imagine making a movie called The Killer and he doesn't kill the fucking last target, which is the guy who orchestrated the entire thing. What is your problem, man? This is, I think, I want to talk to David Fincher and I want to ask him, like, if I could ask him one question, is like, was that you? Like, did you make that choice, or was that Netflix? Well, Netflix forced you to have a happy ending where Michael Fassbender drives home to, like, where does he go? Dominican Republic, and chills by the pool with his girlfriend, who is miraculously fine now and has like one scar. David Fincher is the most nihilistic, pessimistic director of all time. His movies are famous for their incredible endings. Seven, one of the greatest endings of all time. Fight Club, The Social Network. It's just Jesse Eisenberg hitting refresh, and it's one of the greatest endings of all time. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Rooney Mara drives off. In the script it says, like, Lisbeth drives away forever. That's so cool, man. You are literally one of the greatest directors when it comes to ending movies. How could you possibly have allowed this to happen? If it was in fact a David Fincher choice, I would love to hear why. Because I just don't think that's a Fincher ending. It's the least David Fincher ending I've ever seen him do, and it's a happy ending. What's he doing, man?
So I think, so going back to what you were saying about David Fincher, one of the best directors, I feel like, I completely agree. I feel like he's one of the few directors I would really trust to just be given like a complete shit script, but the film is still good.
Yes.
Because when he brings his craft to something, anything, it completely elevates what you're watching.
Has no script.
Right, exactly. And I feel like this is a similar kind of approach to something like Panic Room, where there's a script and David Fincher is like, yeah, sure, let's do this. Like, this, just come in, just do his thing. It's an exercise in his
directing.
It's like he's sort of like he did Mank and he did that obviously because his late father.
More personal film, yeah.
A more personal film, but it's not a David Fincher story, so to speak. It's not a typical David Fincher story. I feel like this coming back to this kind of genre is him sort of being like, sort of getting I'm back kind of thing. Yeah. So I feel like this is like The Killer. If you look at what the story is, it is the most B-movie Netflix
100%.
espionage spy sort of assassin plot ever. But the thing, my point is that,
like, Fincher doesn't let that B-movie Netflix nature slip in until the very end.
Right, exactly. Like I said, I still loved the film because of how well it was executed.
I love the first 3 quarters of the movie. I think
it's brilliant. The ending, though,
fucking shit.
You take a lot of issue with.
I'm offended by the ending. Like, I take personal offense from the ending because the GOAT, my hero, how could, like, either he's like I don't know, like how do you say this? Like, either he's gotten soft in his old age and
I don't think
become more optimistic, or Netflix like said you have to end the movie like that.
I don't know. I mean, look, did he write the script? I'm not sure.
No, he didn't. Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote the script.
Yeah, it was based on the comic book, though,
yes,
the Killer. I feel like the ending, the fact that he doesn't kill the final target,
Don't give me any of that. It shows character growth nonsense.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying because I didn't feel that. If that was their intention, I didn't feel that.
Yeah.
Like that. I don't think that was the point.
Yeah.
I'm still even trying to wrap my head around it because, on the one hand, I kind of agree with you. Sure, like he didn't kill it. What the hell? Him sort of building up and killing all these targets, going from one city to the next, and then to get to the final one and not kill him, or to kill him, would just be like, oh, okay, cool. I don't think the film, for me, emotionally or even from a satisfaction standpoint, would have done much more if he did choose to kill the guy. Because it was like, great.
What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point?
I will say that, like, actually, the last assassination is the most uninteresting one by a mile. He doesn't have to do anything. He just orders. No. The one where he doesn't kill. Sorry, the one where he doesn't.
Oh, he doesn't kill.
Infiltrates like someone's gym and then like orders stuff off Amazon and goes into his penthouse.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, what?
No. Yeah. No. I feel like what I found most fascinating about the film was actually getting into the psyche of Michael Fassbender as the killer. Yep. The monologues that he delivers, and sort of really putting the audience in the headspace of this person and really challenging them to think about and look at the world in a different way.
Yeah.
I thought that was really entertaining.
Did you play Assassin's Creed when you were growing up?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
You know, with a lot of Hitman movies,
yes,
I always think it's just the kill.
Yeah,
that they show. What's cool, you know, when you do Assassin's Creed, you have to do like all the assassination setups. Like you have to do this and that. And this is that. Like you get the assassination, but you also get all the setups, which I think is a really interesting way to portray assassinations. I got a little fun fact for you. I think I might have mentioned this before. You know the guy who plays the Brute?
Yes.
In
this
Florida.
film.
Yeah. Do you know which? This is the greatest casting of all time because you want to cast a Brute. You want to cast someone who's like physically domineering.
Right.
Do you know which famous villain he actually played? He was the body of Sauron. So, like, you know, like, if you want someone big, I guess that's about as big as you can go, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. That's a fun fact for you.
Yeah. But I mean, speaking of which, that fight scene, though, best fight scene of the year. Incredible. Like, you felt every punch, every stab, it was and just to have that in an apartment and it's such a good demonstration of using the environment to your advantage.
I also love how Fincher uses handheld. I thought it was kind of cute actually because David Fincher is so famous for using lockdown shots and stable shots and you know actually adding extra stabilization to his shots in post and everything. So when he goes handheld, you can tell that like it's been like 100 years since he's used handheld. Like he hasn't done handheld properly frequently since 7.
Yeah.
And so I could kind of tell like when he starts using handheld that like he was almost like unsure the way they were editing around handheld and stuff, and obviously there was this whole thing like when he's in control he's locked down, when he's not in control he's handheld. But whenever they go handheld, I'm kind of like, oh, I see what you're trying to do there. Like I know you're kind of like not as confident as you would be, and I was like, I bless you, man. Like I love that you're trying to do that.
Yeah, but it works for that scene really so well though. Yeah. It's brilliant. But yeah, I feel like just to summarize on the killer, I think it's a great exercise in filmmaking. Story is just the same. We've seen the story 100 times before, but what really was the thing that I kind of latched onto with this film was the process and getting into the psyche of this person, which I thought was fantastic. Shall we talk about Saltburn?
Yes, we shall.
Let's talk about Saltburn. So I don't want to go into it too much because I feel like I want to
feelings about the movie.
Yes,
we don't want to.
I almost want to also do a separate episode, which I may or may not do. But once again, myself and you, we saw this on the opening night of the London Film Festival.
I think of the films that we saw that had the best reaction. It was the biggest kind of like crowd, and everyone was, you know.
I felt like it was the sort of the most reactive crowd, the most visceral crowd.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, for reasons obviously that come from the film. Emerald Fennell, right? Or Fennell.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Promising Young Woman?
Hated it.
You hated it.
Yeah.
I watched it the one time.
Everyone I've spoken to didn't like it.
Yeah, it's an incredibly polarizing film.
And there are people who are way less controversial than I am who have said they were like offended by that movie.
Right.
Who have said that they couldn't stand it. Both men and women. So yeah, I just didn't like it.
You didn't like it. But this film though?
Loved every second of it. Saltburn for me was the most unpretentious, exciting, fun movie. It was a film that was enjoying itself. that wasn't trying to say too much. It wasn't trying to be anything more than what it was. I think it was actually a very self-aware movie. It was a movie that had a great sense of energy. Lena Sangren cinematography is stunning. Emerald Fennell directed the shit out of it. You could tell that she loved being on set. You could tell that, even in the difficult moments or whatever, that she was enjoying herself and was, feeding off of the actors, and the actors were feeding off of her. I think the one adjective I would give this movie is energy.
Right.
It has energy. It's like constantly. It's never boring. And there are moments where the movie slows down. You still feel the energy. There are I don't want to get into too much of it, just because I would just be waffling with a bunch of adjectives, positive adjectives for a while. I just had fun. I enjoyed the movie. I was well made.
Right. So I had a similar reaction to you at the beginning, right? I think we both agreed that the film, from a filmmaking standpoint, was such a step up from Promising Young Woman, and it goes to show,
again, with like Bradley Cooper,
Lena Sangren.
Yeah,
fantastic. Coming away from it and like thinking about it. I mean, we watched this basically almost like 2 months ago.
2 months ago, yeah, maybe.
This film, the more I think about it, the less I like it. I think it's fun, and I feel like it was one of the most visceral reactions I had watching a film this year. I thought the music choices were fantastic. Yeah. I thought the film was well directed. I think Emerald Fennell, she's got a lot of talent. Like she really does, and I think I'm like, anytime she's going to release a film, I'm always kind of interested to see what she's going to do. I think she's got talent, but I feel like she's still not really honing in on sort of everything. Certain areas, right.
Well, this is what I said to you last time we were filming Hunger Games at Napoleon, was that actually I think Emerald Fennell is a significantly better entertainer than she is a preacher.
Right.
When she's trying to make a movie that's like really trying to say something, I'm like, oh mate, it doesn't work. But when she's making a movie where like she's having fun, everyone else is having fun, she's doing it for the love of making movies, she's doing it because actually she might have one or two things that she wants to get out, into the world, but for the most part is for the sake of engagement and entertainment. She's fantastic.
But this is where I disagree, because I don't think Saltburn is just that film. I think there is no way for me.
You think Saltburn is actually deeper than it actually?
I feel like Saltburn is not as smart as it thinks it is.
Right.
I feel like this is not just let's go watch this fun film. It has the premise of something much more deep. It had all these different elements, but
I think the film doesn't understand itself.
Exactly. It's confused as to what it wants to be. It's a black comedy. It's an erotic thriller. It's a psycho thriller. It's a satire. It's an eat the rich like piece of cinema. It's all these different things, and none of them really come to fruition. There's no way anyone can convince me that this is just a fun film. Right. You just go to the cinema and watch this film, because it is challenging viewers it's asking questions to the viewer, and there's nothing really of substance here for me. All of the sort of more sort of grotesque kind of daring moments where Barry Keoghan licks the semen off a bathtub, or like
the man juices,
or does something crazy like that. Just for me, looking back on it, just comes off as just so
wow factor,
just shock factor, so cheap, just for like an audience reaction. I don't think this is the thriller it thinks it is. I was like shocked and repulsed at what I was watching. We were verbally reacting to the film as was the audience. It's like, it's so great in so many aspects. I like, when I came out, I really enjoyed the film. I really loved it, and I think I still like the film, but I think I feel so frustrated with like
what could have been,
and like it's not a film that has aged well with me at all. I think the performances are great. Rosamund Pike was fantastic. She's hilarious. She's probably the funniest character this year for me. Barry Keoghan,
best lines. She'd do anything for attention.
If you've seen Saltburn and if you've seen Killing of a Sacred Deer, I think we're in good hands.
Was Jacob Elordi? I thought he was just played the best.
He was Jacob.
Yeah, Felix of all time.
He was Jacob Elordi was great as well.
I think a lot of what you've said just then, I feel about certain movies that I worked on, so I get your frustration.
Yeah.
But I would say, I think we can both agree, the psychological thriller aspect was not as strong as the satirical comedy aspect, right?
Right.
So for me, I enjoyed the satirical aspects of it so much that it
outworked that element.
It was enough for me, is my point. Like, I didn't care about the fact that
but what was it
revealed everything at the end.
But when you say the satirical elements, though, like, what is the film saying that's different from anything else?
Oh no, I just enjoyed it. Like, this is the thing, is like I don't really care like what it's saying or what's going on. Like, I just enjoyed the movie, and I think sometimes, like, you know, it's obviously our job, I guess, in a way, like podcasts and everything, Flick Fanatics, to kind of like delve a little bit deeper into the movies and stuff like that. But for me, it was like, movie looks good, movie acting good, movie fun, movie made me laugh, Panwa enjoy. And movie was extremely well made.
Right.
You know,
that's fair. I mean, look, that's completely fair enough. Yeah, I mean, look, I just think that, like, I don't really know what it was trying to do or how it was. I know it was trying to challenge the audience, but I don't know what it was really trying to challenge the audience with.
Yeah.
Exactly. It takes a trajectory of a specific genre or a bunch of specific genres, and halfway through the film it changes that when it's revealed sort of that Barry Keoghan is one twisted motherfucker.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like, in the end, are you supposed to sympathize for the rich, or are you supposed to sympathize for him?
Yeah.
What is going on here? I've no idea. Yeah, sure. You can watch the film, you can have fun with it, and that's completely fine. And if that's why you like the film, that's why you like the film. Who might say otherwise? Yeah. But for me, like I said, I seem to be the only person in my social group or group of friends and whatnot who this film just hasn't aged well with me. I'd love to see it again and see if I think different, but I don't know if I will.
Cool.
The last film I want to talk about briefly, this is also a film that I would love to do a separate episode closer to the time.
You and Clara would be really good on this one.
Yeah, I would love to see what Clara thinks, which is Poor Things, which is without a doubt my favourite film from the London Film Festival, and certainly one of my favourite films of this year. Shall I kick this one off?
Yeah, go on.
Sure. So, I mean, I haven't seen all of Yorgos Lanthimos' filmography, but the ones I have, The Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer, and The Favourite, Poor Things for me feels like an amalgamation of all of those. It is hilarious, it's bizarre, it's so silly, and although it's not as like sort of deep as the aforementioned films, it still throws, isn't afraid to occasionally pose the odd philosophical question to the audience in like fun and mischievous ways. I thought Emma Stone was absolutely terrific in this film. One of my favorite performances from her, a bold, completely fearless performance on her part. I think the best actress category this year is stacked, and I have no idea which direction it's going to go in. But yeah, filmmaking wise, the entire gang knock it out of the park. I think I don't think I've seen films. I've never seen a film look like that. Almost like this kind of like the backdrop is like almost like a painting, and everything else is like a set, and it's sort of this incredibly sort of surreal.
You know what the movie looks like? It looks like a child's coloring book.
Yes, it looks like a pop-out book. Yeah. Pop-out book. When you open the book and the some of it's physical, some of it's part of the page.
Accurate, because obviously Emma Stone
exactly. And visually, what it's able to depict and how that is reflective of the character, I thought was fantastic. I thought the entire cast was brilliant. Willem Dafoe, Mark Ruffalo.
Out of left field performance of all time.
Amazing stuff.
I think he has the best use of the C word since I think 2-3 years ago with Ben Affleck on The Last Duel.
Yes. Brilliant. What did you think when you watched it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I think it's very creative. I think it's very fun. I think it's remarkably made. I think it's Yorgos Lanthimos' most impressive movie in terms of the craft. What I would like to focus on, because you've already said everything I wanted to say anyway, but what I wanted to focus on was I've not really had a genuinely personal relationship with Lanthimos' films. I find them to be very cold and very distant, and as we said with some films, at arm's length, and that's because it lacks one thing: sincerity. When you look at the movie like The Favourite, it's very comedic, and it's just comedy, and it's just satire. And when it's like Killing of a Sacred Deer, everyone just speaks weirdly, and you don't really feel connected, or you don't feel the performance is that sincere. They're unsettling, and they're good, but they're not sincere. And when you have a movie basically about a kid, and Emma Stone is playing a kid basically, she brings a level of sincerity. She brings a level of earnestness. She brings a level of, I'm like likability, I guess, dare I say. And then so you're following her on this journey, and you want to follow her because you know that whatever it is that this person is doing is pure. There is a purity to this film.
There's an innocence.
Innocence to the film that is not present in any of Lanthimos's previous work. I think a lot of his, funnily enough, Killing of a Sacred Deer was a movie that started with a close-up of open heart surgery. These movies are so cerebral and so intellectually stimulating, but they have no heart. And I think this was the first one that he was able to bring a sense of heart to. So that's why it is my favorite.
I felt like he knocked on the door with The Favourite, and this film was really the one where
let's actually make an emotional movie that has that heart, and that's why I think this is actually my favorite of his.
I agree. I completely agree. I think you nailed that on the head. This film is just incredible. If you guys get a chance to see it, just watch it. Like it's fantastic, and let us know what you thought down below in the comments. But I think overall we've wrapped up pretty well. I think we've spoken about a good plethora of films.
Not too many
Panwa rants. But all in all, a pretty decent year for film, I'd say. Yes, like for sure. I'm excited to see what happens come awards season. But I think we're gonna leave it at that.
I mean, hey, hang on 2 seconds.
Oh, you want to talk about films next year?
No. I just because this is my last episode for a while.
I was getting onto that.
Yeah.
I was getting onto that, man.
I just wanted to quickly say, like, obviously, well, first of all, like, thank you to the viewers as well for kind of supporting Dylan's channel, because obviously I've kind of been there since I don't want to say day one, but I was episode one, shall I say, and to see that over the last year, it's kind of the way that it's grown and the amount of people that he's been able to bring on both in front of the and behind the camera. To assemble like the popcorn podcast army, if you will, of really good people has been, and to see the way that it's grown through Instagram, TikTok, and everything, the artwork that Clara now does, it's really fulfilling just for me as his friend, but also to thank everyone, you obviously for Popcorn Podcast, because obviously, as you know, this year has been like the most busy, eventful, fast-paced sprint of my life. The best year of my life, I would say. And to have something like this where I would come in, on average, like once a month, is so grounding and so good at kind of like allowing me to keep my feet on the ground and having a reality check of, every episode that we filmed. It's when we did the Oscars episode here with me, you, and Mickey, it's like, I just came back from something not so nice, or there would be moments where like I'm about to go shoot something, or John Wick episode, or like after the Fast and Furious episode, I'm about to go somewhere really exciting. So I have these episodes now that are locked, kind of like memory chapters for me of this year, that I can then go back to and think, I was this person then, and it really means a lot to me. And actually, more than that is, I would say, obviously, like, not to get too kind of emotional, but the friendship that we've developed, me, you, Mickey, Theo, Joe, and everyone, has obviously evolved because of this. But more than that, what it's really done for me this year, and for Panwa, has been, coming once a month to talk about movies with my mates, to do what I love with the people that I love, which is my definition of happiness. To be able to do that once a month has provided me with a kind of peace and calm that I really, really needed this year, because I've been doing so much and getting on with so much, to kind of come for 2 hours and just disappear and not think about anything else, and not think about the past, think about the future, and just enjoy, I think has given me, peace and calm. So I have to thank you, and I have to thank you for that as well. But I hope that I can come back soon.
Look, man, you don't need to say thank you to me. I should be saying thank you to you. You have been an absolute powerhouse on this. And this is not goodbye, by the way. You will be back. You will be back. You're an absolute powerhouse this year. Even though this is your last episode for the year, we don't know when you're going to be back next. But to be able to do this and just have someone who I can rely on all the time. Number one, because he's the only other person I know. This is why he's doing this episode with me, because he's the only person who've seen all of these films. Is amazing. And obviously we connected through just our general love of film. And I know we always joke about, Popcorn Podcast, it's the Panwa Podcast as well, kind of thing. But like, seriously, and I said this at the start, it does really feel like you've almost been this sort of indirect co-host, and to have you on episode by episode and to have you here has just been nothing but a pleasure, man. And like I really appreciate it, and I'm honored that you've said so many nice things, but I'm honored that just this has had a small part to play in your in this year in general.
Because when I look back on this year and I've done a lot, I will also think, because I've done like I've done some crazy shit, like I will look back on this as like that consistency in my life, that discipline, that stability, of like, oh, we're doing this again. It gives me something to look forward to every month. So I'm like, I like that.
Well, I'm sure the watchers and the listeners have absolutely loved hearing and seeing you for sure. And this is, like I said, this is not goodbye. This is only farewell. I'd say yes.
No, it's see you.
It's see you. See you.
What does King Schultz say? Like I don't want to see Auf Wiedersehen, because Auf Wiedersehen means I'll see you again. Yeah. In this case, I won't see you again. There you
go. No. What a lovely note to end on. Thank you, man. That's been very, very touching end to this episode, and a nice way to, I'd say, wrap up Panwa's
little stint for season one.
For season one, exactly. Well, I think there's no better way to leave this episode and say farewell. So on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching, listening, and we will catch you very soon in the next episode of the Popcorn Podcast, season one. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.